Welcome back, and what's going on? It is time for the New Orleans Saints. You're on the clock. We're doing a 2026 NFL mock draft, all 7 rounds. Let's get to it. So with that being said, we're doing every New Orleans Saints pick as it stands today, November 2025. Right now, I'm going to go with the idea that Tyler Shuck is the guy they're going to give a couple of years to because they spent such high draft capital on him. So far in 2 games, he's been down and then up. So, I mean, the trajectory is moving in the right direction if they really do think he can be their starter for the future, their franchise quarterback. I think that remains to be seen. If I'm the Saints here at pick 2, you certainly could target a quarterback. There's going to be plenty to go for. We've seen a lot of ups and downs with these quarterbacks in this class, though. So if they really do like Tyler Shuck, which I'm presuming they're going to stick with him at least for all of next year as well, I'm going with probably an edge rusher here at pick 2. Some of the big needs I see for them are edge because they're aging there. They need a wide receiver to go opposite Chris Olave. I think there's still a need there. They're needing interior offensive line help. Over the last 2 drafts, they've taken tackles with their first pick. So we're going to stick with those guys are hopefully going to continue to develop into bookend tackles for them, and we need some help on the interior. We need some linebackers, some secondary help, maybe a little bit there. So some of these needs are going to be things that we're going to look to address. A running back might not be a bad thing. Kendre Miller has continued to be injured, and Alvin Kamara is not getting any younger. So these are some pieces that we're going to look for. Up on the clock at pick 2, we're just going to look and see what edge rushers we have. So some of the top ones are all available, right? We know that at 1, Ruben Bain's going to go, or at least that's presuming at this point. Every mock draft I've run, that's who they've given Tennessee at 1. And it wouldn't surprise me right now. It looks like he's the best player in this class. I think it's kind of a no-brainer at that point. Then you're either looking Keldric Faulk from Auburn, or, if you really want to consider someone like David Bailey, you certainly could. These are kind of the next men up in the list here. I think a lot of these guys are way too far down. If you're going at 2, you kind of have to go with one of the top ones. And just because I want to give you transparency, here's, obviously the ones that are listed at the top here. Reese would be a really intriguing one. It's hard for me to see anybody taking a linebacker in the top, 5 to 10, even as good as Arvell Reese is. Outside of that, I think it's quarterbacks, offensive linemen, edge rushers. You might see a wide receiver sprinkled in there, but the guys that are here, they don't need. And with Brian Breesy in the middle there, I think we're going edge rusher. We're going to go Keldric Faulk from Auburn because a guy like Keldric Faulk is big enough and strong enough and physical enough and has the pass rushing ability to be a guy that could use inside or outside. It gives them that flexibility along the defensive line that I think they're going to need as they try to kind of build a new identity under new head coach Kellen Moore. With that being said, on to our second round pick. For me, it's a no-brainer. With some of the wide receivers that are sitting here, I'm going wide receiver. Chris Olave's elite. He's a really good wide receiver. You can use him inside, outside, use him in the slot, things like that. We need that big physical, great separation, big wingspan, kind of that wide receiver 1, prototypical wide receiver 1 type player. That's Denzel Boston from Washington. I mean, he's got everything you could look for, 6'3", 6'4", probably running in the low 4.5 range. He's great at separating. At his size, he's got a huge catch radius. He's got that I can be your wide receiver 1 ability. And now you're beginning to give your young quarterbacks some pieces to work with, and that's going to be a big deal for them. On the clock of the 3rd round here, I think there's probably 2 or 3 positions that you could consider here. Interior offensive line, which is what I'm going with because one of my favorite centers in the draft class is still available. I think running back would be certainly an area that we could look at here kind of in the mid rounds, and then probably linebacker. But I like Stutzman. I like some of the young linebackers they have. So I'm going to go with Jake Slaughter from Florida. I think he's a much better pass protector than a run blocker as it stands currently. And that's what they're going to need. This team, as they continue to build and rebuild and create a new identity, I think they're going to need to be able to pass the ball. So you're going to need some of those high-level pass protectors. And I think I'm not a big Fortner fan, currently what they have. And I think you could put Slaughter anywhere on that interior as a guard or a center, and he could probably start from you day 1. But for me, I would want to put him in as a center and be a starter from day 1 at center. Back on the clock here in the 4th round, I think it's a no-brainer. You've got to grab your running back at this point, especially with both of Penn State's really nice running backs on the board. Singleton is the guy I'm going to go here just because I think he's a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit more athletic, a little bit more of an elite, high-end kind of big play threat from the running back position. But if you argued me either of them, I would absolutely not buy in. I would not argue with you on either, because I think both bring a really nice profile to the NFL. The thing I like about Singleton is I think New Orleans is sooner rather than later need to find their RB1. And I think Singleton's a better RB1, where I think Allen's a better, kind of part of a 1-2 mix, where I think Singleton could be, kind of a 3-down, I don't want to say workhorse, but a 3-down type back. He's got great body control. He's got the burst and the top end speed that teams are going to look for. I think he just brings more to the table and gives you that little bit of extra that I think if you can get him in the 4th round, which I'm really be surprised if you could, I'd be all over that if I was a team like the Saints. Back on the clock here in the 5th round, and I think we're going to target outside linebacker. We're looking at our edge rushers here, and I think, I don't love what the Saints are going to put out there on the edges. I think we need to get you some help. I'm going to go for a guy like Derrick Moore out of Michigan because I like his size, the speed combination that he brings to the table. I think he's got that burst, and he's played at a high level against big-time competition and been able to make a difference. I think what he could do, I don't know if he's, at this point, I don't think he's necessarily a day one starter, but he's a guy that I think you develop into, kind of your outside linebacker of the future, especially if they're spending a lot more time, focusing on a 3-4. I think he's a guy that could stand up and rush really well for them, and I think would be a good piece to help build that defense around. Back on the clock in the 5th round, I think after Juwan Johnson, you really need some depth at tight end. So I'm going to look to take one here just because Jack Endries from Texas is sitting here and still available. I think it kind of is a no-brainer to add a versatile tight end to the mix here. You can split him outside, let him play as a pass catcher. You can bring him in. He's probably a better pass catcher than run blocker at this stage in the career, but you can work on that. I think he fits in really nicely, has good size, speed, kind of can be a nice backup to Juwan Johnson as he's your one. I mean, he's a really good tight end. So give me Jack Endries here, and I think we just add another pass catcher into the mix and get you some skill position players that can really help your young quarterback out. Back on the clock here with one of our last couple picks, and with a player like Nyck Harbor, if he's still available with his size, speed combination, I think he's a guy that you definitely could look at here late. I would be kind of surprised if he didn't go a little earlier than the 5th round. But if he's here, why not take a stab at him, especially because you need multiple pass catchers, whether you use him as more of a bigger slot receiver, maybe you add some weight on him and use him as kind of a tight end, more of a pass catching tight end. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could do with a player of his size and stature that I think it doesn't hurt to double dip. I know last year's draft, they double dipped on defensive backs. They need a few pass catchers, so it would not surprise me if they take a couple in this draft, whether it's multiple wide receivers, wide receiver, tight end, maybe in this case, 2 wide receivers and a tight end. I think that offense really does need to get an influx of new pass catchers that can help them. So I'm going to jump on Nyck Harbor here. And with our next pick here, I'm going to look at a corner just because I don't love the depth they have. I think they've got solid starters, but I think after that, I think you could use an influx of some help there. I would expect maybe a guy that could play on the outside because they could use some help there. I think they could use, Quincy Riley, I think is a really solid starter on the outside from Kool-Aid. And I think Taylor is your nickel is a solid piece. But after that, you really don't have depth. But I'm not going to go with the suggestion here from Mock Draft Database. I'm going with Daylen Everette from Georgia. I think he's got great size. He's extremely fast. I think that he's got a big wingspan, and he's a little bit of a ball hawk in him, I think you're going to see as he goes to the next level, as he develops, I think he could turn into a nice starting outside corner for him. And that would be a really big help because I think they're going to need at least 1 or 2 more corners this offseason, whether it's through the draft or free agency. So give me Daylen Everette. And that wraps up this mock draft. Obviously, as always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Does this make your team better? Do you think this is what's going to happen? I know a lot's going to happen between now and the NFL draft. We've got free agency. Picks will get inevitably traded or moved around throughout draft day. But if your team landed with this haul, if I got you some edge, some wide receiver, some offensive line, a new running back, tight ends, I mean, would this be okay with you? Would you like this for your roster? Let me know in the comments, and we'll talk to you again later.